So I would say let's start because we have a few things to show today. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on our 5th edition of the Keep Up with Pryme webinar. My name is Laura Andradas. I'm marketing lead at Pryme Global, and together with Aske Holst, product manager at Pryme Global, we will walk you through some of our new features. And if there's some time left, we will take a deep dive into contracts. So let's start with advanced projects. We have an announcement to do regarding the app source because now you can find us under our new name. Since we are serving in more corners of the world, we have included the Asia Pacific region. In terms of enhancements, we see new features concerning the drop shipment purchase orders, a new function for the copy project, and also enhancements in terms of the bill to customer number. Let's move forward to Pryme Fund Management. Here there are new features in terms of the limit on type of cost and also the expiry date of commitments. Pryme Time, our time tracking application built on advanced projects. As you can see, the list is pretty long here. We have many new features in this release concerning the time tracking calendar. There's also a new timesheet reminder for managers, and the tiles of the start and stop timer have been included on the BC mobile version, etc. Aske will be showing all of these in the demo in a few seconds. Concerning the CIS and RCT tax retention, in here we see application enhancements with reference to the multiple site identifier numbers for the RCT and the blank posting groups. And last but not least, Pryme Intercompany. Here we have new features concerning the conditions on topics, an easier update for subscription fields, and there's the possibility of transferring project ledger entries, but right now it's only on a preview version. So that was it from my side. I'll hand it over to Aske, who will be showing you all these new features, and we'll see each other at the end of the presentation for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And so let's kick it off. It is quite an agenda today. I think this is a record number of new features in a single release, so we need to get started. So first off, advanced projects. We have a few new features, and I'll try to show those. So first off, we have, and I need to go back. Sorry about that. So we have the possibility now to do drop shipment orders on purchases within projects. I will not show that feature. Those of you who know about drop shipment and need that functionality, it is now available. What is more generally applicable is a new copy projects feature where you can create a new blank project. So I'll create a new project and I'll only give it a number. I'll not give it a customer. I'll not fill in anything else. I just have a blank project and it is project number 11. With that, you get a new option in the action menu, copy from project, where you can say, I would like to copy from project number, demo 5 in this instance, I would like to copy different parts of the data. That could be task, that could be invoice setup, that could be pricing, milestones, scheduled billings, etc. So you can really do a copy of something with a lot of data. Then the question, of course, becomes, why is that not just templates? And the simple answer is, yes, we have templates for tasks. We have templates for invoice setup. We have templates for pricing, but it simply becomes too much to create all the combinations of templates for milestones and scheduled billings, etc. So the templates make sense in the scenarios where you have something that is reused often. The copy project is more for the scenarios where you want to roll forward a project, do the same thing again, or do something similar. And it is as simple as selecting what you want, click OK. And in this case, I get a list of tasks from the other project. And I can also see if I look at something like prices that, yes, I got the prices that that project has copied over into here. So simple copy function. And that is about it. And what more do we have on the agenda? Oh yeah, the scheduled billings. So scheduled billings now specify the bill to customer. So we can see there's a bill to customer field on a scheduled billing. Having a customer on a scheduled billing is nothing new. The new thing is that we explicitly always put in the bill to customer number. So there's no question of who will be billed for this. And this was more to simplify scenarios where there might be one sell to customer, another bill to customer, and even scenarios where you're splitting billing, etc. And it became sometimes a bit unclear who would actually be paying for this scheduled billing. Now we're saying there's always a bill to customer on every single scheduled billing, and it's very clear to see who that is without going back and looking at who's a bill to customer on that project. So trying to simplify things. With this feature, we had to do a bit of upgrade to data. In 99% of situations, that bill to customer should be correctly set. Theoretically, there is a chance that it could be incorrectly set. And so there's actually a new column on the scheduled billing that can be found with inspection, which will show you the what we call legacy customer number. So if there was a previous different customer number, we will find it in here. Again, I don't think it's something that would happen, but for very specific scenarios with different bill to customers on different scheduled billings and changing bill to customer back and forth on the projects, this could be relevant. So if you have very complex scenarios around scheduled billings using a lot of the features of who to bill, then please check this legacy customer number versus a bill to customer number on the scheduled billings before you do the final implementation and live. Next up, we have Pryme Fund Management, our app for managing funds and accounting for funds. We have two new features in there, limitations of types of cost and expiry of commitments. The limitation of types of cost is something we will use in fund allocation. So if I have a nonprofit or other kind of project that I'm funding, I have this plan-to-plant project, which I will fund with some fund allocation. In here, in my funding, we can see that currently it's pulling out the budget at a value of slightly less than £5,000. I could say for this project that we will not fund every kind of cost in this project. Maybe there are some limitations on what we're allowed to fund with, in this case, public funding. And so I could put in limitations and say, we do not want to fund for anything else than resources. So I will exclude items and I'll exclude GL accounts. That means that if I update with the budget now again, I should maybe get a slightly different budget. I don't, because I did not budget for anything else. But if I update my usage, I will see that this is now a lower amount. And this could be either the type of cost, but it could also be a filter of what task I want to include. And if I want to be really advanced, I could switch to an advanced mode where I can edit this with the full set of fields. So I can filter on any kind of fields on the budget entries or on the project ledger entries. So again, kind of a special scenario in funding but very useful for those who need it. The other new option was the expiry of commitments. The use case for that is when you're doing funding, and we have a fund commitments in here. So let's open up our fund commitments. So we're getting money from a funder. They are saying we can get a certain amount at a certain point in time, and we're getting money from trade research. We're getting that today, and we can use that money from, let's say, April 1st. So that's the effective date. That is going into a public fund. We're getting £10,000. And again, let's say it's from April 1st, we can use it, but maybe there's also a best before date on it, an expiry date. We need to spend that money before a certain date. Then we can put it on, say we have until the end of June to spend that money. And doing this, the system will enforce that when we start spending the money. If we try to spend this money on costs that are after the end of June, the system will stop us and say that is no longer possible to spend that money, and we'll find out if we need to do a refund, reclassify, etc. But there's now an expiry on funds gotten from funders. Moving on to Pryme Time. Here we have a lot of new features for mainly usability. So we have time entry showing in the time tracking calendar. We have a new reminder email. We have a start-stop quick access button. We have indicators on time entries created. We have a representation of working hours in the calendar, and we are highlighting running time tracking in the calendar. So a lot around the time tracking features, but also a few other areas. So let's get into it. So with the time tracking, I can open up my timesheet. And I have my timesheet here. I created a few time entries for some work I did. And this is time I've just put in that I spent 2 hours on a specification and 1 hour on development. But I didn't use the start-stop function to track this time. I just put in this as a number of hours. Which means that if I open up my time tracking calendar where I'm tracking everything with a start-stop timer, there are definitely some holes in my calendar. And that probably corresponds to the time that I track directly in the time sheet without using my stop-start timer to set when did I actually do it. But now these time entries are shown at the top level here. And so I get an indication that, well, maybe perhaps this gap is what should have been filled in by this time entry. And if I want to make it very obvious that it is in fact this time, I can drag it down. And in this case, it is a 2-hour long time entry. We just saw that. So when I let go of it, it will fill out 2 hours of time like that. And the same with this one. I can drag it in, say, yes, I did that during the day. Let's just drag it here somewhere. And it expands to 1 hour because it was 1 hour of work on the timesheet. And maybe I didn't do it during the lunch break. Maybe I did it down here. So again, with the philosophy of the name of the game is to fill the board, make sure you don't have any gaps, it becomes very obvious where your gaps are. I still have some gaps in my calendar here where I need to find out what did I do during that time. I have some gaps here. I need to fill that in before I submit my timesheet, but at least everything I know about, I can get filled in here. While we're in the time tracking calendar, you see here that we have these indicators. They can take different forms. So we see this checkmark button, meaning the time entry is up to date. So there's a one-to-one relationship between the time entry and the time tracking. Down here, on the other hand, I have something where the time entry needs to be created or updated. So I get a visual indication, and if I want to update, I can go in and use the create update time entries to make that update happen. I also get a visual indication of what is ongoing time or a running timer. We can see this entry down here has a red border around it, and that's because it's something that I'm currently tracking. This is, of course, the meeting we're in right now, Keep Up with Pryme. I'm tracking that. It started at 11:30, my local time, but I haven't set it an end time because it's still ongoing, and I want to visualize that this is still ongoing work, and this will keep expanding as time passes here. One more thing is the working hours representation in the calendar. So we see here that for my calendar, the days start at 8 and they end at 5. And that's because we have a setup for working hours. So now you can have your working hours actually reflect. In earlier versions, it guessed on what the working hours would be, and that would just be a default, and hopefully that would fit. But of course, in different companies, there are different working hours. Now you can set it up in the working hours setup table and have that reflect in the calendar. It will also make sure to not highlight the days that are non-working days like Saturdays or Sundays or even banking holidays, etc. The last two things we have is the start-stop tiles on the role center and the timesheet reminder for managers. The start-stop tiles are, of course, directly connected to the time tracking. So we can see I'm currently tracking my Keep Up with Pryme. And as soon as I want to stop that, I could, of course, open up my time tracking entries. See here, yes, now I'm done. I press the stop button. But we now have a very clear indication on the role center also that you have something running that you can stop. And this really starts to make more sense when you have your mobile phone, where this becomes a tile on the front page of the BC app. So when you open that up, you can go in here and you can say, yes, now I'm done with this task, stop the timer. I want to track something else, start a timer. What am I working on? It's a new meeting. Perfect. Done. Track that. And so I have one more. And of course, I could start multiple things if I'm multitasking and also doing some emails at the same time. Then, of course, I have two trackers running at the same time. And if I try to stop them, I'll be prompted for which one I want to stop. The last thing is not related directly to time tracking. It's more for time entry in general. We, for some time, have had the email that you can send out to resources when they haven't submitted their timesheet on time. That was an email directed to the person who have forgotten their timesheet. Now we have a new email, an email to the manager that looks something like this, where you get a list of your reports, the resources that you're the line manager for, and what timesheets they have not yet submitted. And then you can decide what to do with it. In this case, both Cassie and Daniel haven't submitted their timesheets. I might just go ahead and forward that to them and say, why haven't you done that your timesheets? Or I might pick up the phone and give them a call and say, why haven't you submitted your timesheets? And just the knowledge that they know that I, as a manager, get that email, that might prompt them to submit their time. The way to set that up is within the timesheet configuration. Let's see, what do we have that? Timesheet config list. We now have fields within the timesheet section for what kind of reminder do we want to send to line manager 1. I've set this to a summary email, meaning I get one email with a list of all the resources that haven't submitted time. I could also set it to individual. In that case, I would get one email per person who haven't submitted their timesheet. I think the summary option is probably the most used, and you can do the same for line manager 2. So if somebody has two managers, both of them can get emails when they haven't submitted their time. And then you will probably set up a job queue for running this at an appropriate time. Maybe that is Monday morning or something like that. Moving on to a completely different topic, our tax retention app for CIS and RCT. We're making some smaller adjustments, but something that has been asked by a number of customers. One is for the RCT, so the relevant construction tax in Ireland, where you're required to put on a site identifier to identify what site work was performed on by the subcontractor. And that we now have on the purchase invoice. So if I open up a purchase invoice here, let's take this for John Smith. He's a sole contractor. I can see that there's now a field for the site identification number. I can put that in specifically on that invoice. I can also put it on the vendor if there's a default, but I can always override it on a purchase by purchase invoice because while there might be a default, we want to know for each invoice what site was the work performed on. And this will then go into the ledgers as well, so we can look at that and report on it at a later point in time. And while we're in here, one of the things that we will see is that we've also opened up for the posting setup to allow putting in lines that do not have a posting group set up, or they do have posting groups, but where we haven't defined the posting group on that account or item. So I'll actually show this setup first. That might make a bit more sense. So in our, that was not what I was going for. It was the retention tax posting. So what we now allow is to have these combinations, and this is akin to what we see in VAT posting setup or other posting setups, that you can have combinations with a blank code. So that allows you to create something like an invoice, but I can select an account in here which doesn't have a posting group selected on it. So I can just go in and say any kind of account here. Maybe it should be something that actually makes sense. And why doesn't that work? I'll do something else. Let's go back out of this. Custom materials. I haven't defined, here I have defined a product posting group. So that's fine. I'll just have to put in the quantity and amount. But if I select another account, let's say miscellaneous expenses here, then it actually gives me a message about the VAT posting setup. But the idea would be that if I have an account which doesn't have the retention tax product posting group, I can allow to have that and later then change it to something else. So you don't have to put in the retention tax product posting groups on every single account that you want to post on. So optional feature. Last thing is for the intercompany, and now I think I lost my presentation. Doesn't matter. For intercompany, we have some minor changes, some bigger changes. One of the much thought after features is a feature to update a subscription based on changes made in the corresponding topic. So we're really into company here. We have a topic in one company, we're making changes, we have a subscription in another company, and we want to update with those. Previously, it was possible. It was a bit of a number of steps. Now it's very easy. That's a field function here called update source fields. As simple as that. So just new action, push that, everything gets up to date. The other thing to be aware of is topics. And I have a topic here for sending over resources. I'm sending two different tables. I'm sending over the resource table and default dimension table. And we can see that I have some conditions on this table. I don't want to send resources with a blank base unit of measure, and I don't want to send resources that are marked as external. These conditions are not new. They have existed for some time. The new thing is that we enforce them all the time. So previously, these were only enforced if you use the create messages function. Now they are also triggered for automatic updates. So if I create a new resource, it will not be transferred as long as the base unit of measure is blank. But the minute I set the base unit of measure, it will be transferred. But of course, as long as it is not an external resource. Be aware that if you use this function, if you have changes that at some point brings a table within the conditions and then change it back later, the system will pick up that change. It is faster than you are. So if I have a resource, it has base unit measure blank, it's not transferred, I change it to something, and then I change it back again to blank. The system might pick up the change that at some point in time, it did have a base unit of measure, and so it will transfer it, even if my intention was, yeah, I just want to change it quickly and then back again. But it will see that at some point it fulfills the conditions, and so it will send it. And lastly, for the changes in here is that we have a new topic type or new topic type where we can now transfer, I'll call this project ledger entries. We have a process to transfer project ledger entries out from one company, and on the receiving side, they will go into a journal and be posted. So for intercompany expenses, intercompany item use, etc., this can be an option. We are still marking this as only being in preview because we want to make sure that it is thoroughly tested. We have, of course, done some testing, but there's a lot of questions about how is this supposed to be used in some scenarios. So if you want to use this function, get in touch with us before you put it into live production. That's all I had to say, and I think that leaves us at the end of the presentation as well, with no time to go into contracts today, unfortunately.
Hope to see you very soon in our new next Keep Up with Pryme. We wish you a very nice weekend and see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.